Hello all, welcome back to Scoolya. Today we have Achsah M John. She had her MSc in Forensic Science. She has been our assistant professor at JAIN deemed to be university and adjunct faculty at Sherlock Institute of Forensic Science, New Delhi. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Navita.
Welcome to Scoolya. Shall we begin, ma'am?
Thank you so much, Navita, for taking me on stage. Yeah, we can start with the session.
Okay. Today we are going to talk about scene of crimes. So the first question is, what is a scene of crime, ma'am?
So basically, when we talk about a crime scene, we know what is a crime. So any omission of an act that is being mentioned in the court of law is basically a crime. So wherever a crime takes place, no matter what the location is, what the scenario is, that is basically being, called as a crime scene. Now, when we talk about a crime scene, we basically have different types of crime scene. It comes under two category. One is the primary and the other one is a secondary. So depending upon the location, depending upon the evidences, we call it as a primary or a secondary crime scene. So basically putting everything under one umbrella, wherever a crime has taken place, wherever an offense has taken place, we call that place as a crime scene.
Okay, ma'am. So the second question is, are there any specific types of crime scene that makes it challenging to perform your job?
Yeah, surely we do have such, crime scenes which are quite challenging for the investigating officer or for the other officers to perform their, investigation part. Let me just give you it with an example. In certain scenarios, we do get an outdoor crime scene. We have an indoor, we have an outdoor crime scene. Indoor crime scene aren't to a higher extent, it's not that challenging as compared to an outdoor crime scene. But yeah, there are certain times, with respect to outdoor crime scenes, challenges in the sense, it could be the environmental challenges, or, the climatic challenges, because there are a lot of, a number of evidences that are being scattered all over the location where the crime has taken place. For example, if it is raining, if it is summer season, there's a blood stain, definitely it will get dried up. There will be a lot of environmental factors which actually, affects these evidences. So ultimately, this is one challenge. Talking about another, challenge that we face with respect to a crime scene is, in case of an outdoor crime scene, to barricade the crime scene is pretty challenging because, in with respect to Indian scenario, the thing is, there will be a lot of onlookers. So they'll be so curious to get inside the crime scene. Then definitely there will be a lot of, destruction that will be happening to these evidences which are there. So yeah, outdoor crime scene, whenever it comes, it is quite challenging to maintain the entire scene of crime, to protect it, to preserve it. That is one challenge that is being faced not only in India but yeah, all over the world.
Okay, ma'am. So the next question is, what is the first task you complete when you arrive at the crime scene?
So basically, we actually follow the 7S of crime scene management. We have 7S. So according to the first S, it is securing of the crime scene. But above all these S, we have one important, important procedure that needs to be carried out. That is actually, giving medical assistance to the victim, or, to the person who is there in the scene of crime. If at all the person who is present, if at all the individual who is present in the scene of crime is in a living condition, then we need to give a medical assistance. We need to save that person so that we can extract a lot of, information regarding the scene, regarding the crime that has been committed by the suspect or by the perpetrator. So that is the first step that needs to be taken by an investigating officer when, he or she arrives at the scene of crime. is a crime scene. And ultimately, when we are giving the medical assistance, we also need to protect and secure the crime scene. That is the most important thing. If we just give the medical assistance and we just leave the crime scene, the entire crime scene gets into a helter and skelter way. So apart from, after giving the medical assistance, we need to secure, we need to, barricade the entire crime scene.
Okay, ma'am. So the next question is, what steps do you take to preserve the evidence at a crime scene?
Okay, now preserving an evidence at a crime scene depends. Actually, it depends upon the type of evidence that we get in a given crime scene. If you've ever heard about these wet and dry evidence, that is actually a category of evidence. There are times when we get a wet stain, there are times when we get a dry stain. So it depends upon what evidence we are getting, and according to the type of evidence, we need to preserve it. I'll just take an example, to brief you about the, preservation part is, if at all we get a blood stain, let's take it as a wet blood stain or any sort of stain that is there in a given crime scene. The moment we get a stain, we're not supposed to judge whether it is a blood stain, whether it is a saliva. It could be any stain. If it is a red colored stain, that means it could be a blood. It's a probability. It could be blood or any sort of red stain that is there in a given crime scene. Now, since it is in a wet condition, we are supposed to take three swabs. One is a sample swab, the another one is a control swab, and the last one is a blank swab. So these are the three different swabs that are being taken. Now, each and every swab, it has its own importance because we need to compare it. Because if it is a blood stain, we're actually taking a solution, normal saline solution, that is what is taken to collect a stain. If it is a wet stain, no need of such solution. But if it is a dried stain, we need to take a solution so that we can easily collect it. Or even if you're not taking a swab, we can also go for scraping method. We can scrape it by using a scalpel. So in case of a wet, stain, after collecting it, we need to air dry it. That is the most important part. If whatever stain, no matter whatever stain it is, we need to air dry it properly. If we don't air dry it properly, there will be a lot of contamination that will happen with respect to the wet stain. Air dry it under room temperature, and then we need to pack it. Each swabs are to be packed separately in plastic vials or plastic Ziploc bags, whatever is the packing material that we are carrying, we need to pack it accordingly. And the most important part is we need to label all these, evidences that are being collected. We need to label it. What is this particular evidence? XYZ is the evidence, the person who collected it. All the details and the information regarding the evidence, regarding the person who collected it, needs to be mentioned on the package. So that is how we preserve the entire, we collect and then we preserve the entire evidences.
Okay, ma'am. So the next question is, what is a chain of custody and why is it so important?
Yeah. So this is something very important, that comes with respect to a crime scene management. Chain of custody is basically maintaining a chain of all the activities that takes place within the crime scene. For example, there's a crime that has taken place at an XYZ location. We enter the crime scene. The moment we enter the crime scene, we need to maintain a chain of activities that is being carried out by the officers. X person did the search pattern, Y person did the packing of the evidences. So who all are handling the evidences? That is the most important thing. Or who all are handling the evidences, where and all it is going. So we need to maintain a chain so that if at all there is any sort of discrepancy that arise with respect to an evidence. For example, the evidence was being tampered. It was being packed properly, it was being sealed properly, but unfortunately, the person who was handling didn't take care of the entire evidence. So there is some sort of, manipulation that is being done with respect to the evidence. So we'll get an idea okay, XYZ person has handled the particular evidence. So because of which there is some sort of, changes, or that the seal is broken, or whatever the change has been observed with respect to the evidence can be later on, we can narrow down with the help of these chain of custody, the entire chain that has been maintained. So what, no matter whatever the type of crime it is, whatever the type of crime scene it is mandatory. It is an important procedure that needs to be carried out within the crime scene management.
Okay, ma'am. So the next question is, how do you ensure the integrity of the evidence that you collected?
Yeah. So the moment we enter the crime scene, we actually take a photograph. We do a photography. The moment we enter into the crime scene, from the entrance, from the entry till we leave or till we exit the crime scene, we do a videography. That is the first thing that tells us what all evidences were there, who all have collected the evidences. So that is one thing, like who all has put on the hands with respect to the X evidence. Now, after we pack the evidence, we do a process of packing the evidence. Basically, we can go for a bundle fold, or we can go for a druggist fold. Okay, once we do the packing, we do write all the information. Before we put the evidence into that particular bundle, we write all the details about the person who is, packing the evidence, who collected the evidence, what sort of evidence it is, what is the location, time, date, the investigating officer signature. So there's a lot of information that needs to be maintained on the exhibit. Now, once the exhibit, for example, that's a hair sample. I have packed the hair sample. After packing the hair sample, what I do is I need to seal it. There is a specific seal. Okay, every lab, every CSI team, they carry a seal with them. That is nothing but a normal shellac wax seal that is being used. So the seal is actually being put on the exhibit. Wherever the opening is, for example, there is a name. So the name the seal has an initial. For example, it could be an XYZ, or the initial or the individual seal. Now I have packed it, I have sealed the particular evidence, which is wherein I'm ensuring that yes, there is a proper integrity with respect to this evidence. Now once the evidence is being transferred from the crime scene to the FSL or to the lab for the purpose of analysis, if at all there is any sort of change in the seal, the seal has been broken, or the seal is completely different from the seal that has been with the by the investigating officer, we can actually identify that, because there's something known as a forwarding letter. In the forwarding letter, we actually give the sample of the seal that we used on the exhibit. We maintain the integrity of the evidence. We seal it properly, so that we are maintaining it properly. There is no other sort of contamination that will happen to the evidence. And sealing is the main evidence. This is the exact evidence collected from the crime scene. There is no other manipulation that is being done with respect to the evidence that has reached the lab.
Okay, ma'am. So can you please differentiate between a circumstantial evidence and a corroborative evidence?
Okay. We know what is an evidence. Okay, any sort of a physical entity that is present in a given crime scene which links the crime victim and the suspect, that is an evidence. Now we have a lot of different types of evidences. Under that we have the circumstantial evidence and corroborative evidence. To explain this, it's better if I go with an example. Corroborative evidence is something which supports the initial evidence. Initial evidence in the sense, for example, I've got a knife from the crime scene. That is my initial evidence. Now, to support that, I'm giving a corroborative evidence. Corroborative evidence is nothing but giving a witness testimony. I have witnessed a crime scene. There are certain initial evidence that I've got from the crime scene. So, to support those initial evidences, I'm giving my testimony. Yes, or no, on 15th of November, I saw a person wearing a red colored t-shirt leaving that particular crime scene with gloves and XYZ are the elaboration that can be done with respect to the person. So any sort of evidence which supports the initial evidence is known as a corroborative evidence. Now, talking about the circumstantial evidence, there is a crime that has taken place. You have entered the crime. You discover there is a dead body. Nearer to the dead body or nearer to the individual, there is a knife, seemingly covered in blood. Based on the circumstance, you give a verdict, you make a statement, yes, the person has died with the help of this particular knife that is present. That is a circumstance. Or taking another example, which will be much better to understand, is a person has witnessed a suspect leaving a crime scene, and when the person was leaving the crime scene, he was holding a knife in his hand, which was completely soaked in blood stain. Now, the witness who saw this particular incident comes to the police. The police has entered into the crime scene. They see a dead body. So there is a circumstance. Somebody has left the crime scene holding a knife. So based on the circumstance, we can actually jot down, we can actually narrow down the entire investigation that yes, that could be the person who has murdered or who has killed this person and left the crime scene with the knife. So this is something known as circumstantial evidence. So there is a difference between circumstantial evidence and corroborative evidence. Based on the circumstance, we actually make a statement, yes, this could be the crime scene. But corroborative evidence is something which supports the initial evidence that has been recovered from the crime scene.
Okay, ma'am. So, what is the common myth about crime scene investigation?
I can't say it as a common myth. Yeah, there are certain issues, or there are certain things that happen with respect to crime scene investigation. The police officers, they are not much aware nowadays. Yes, I can say that most of them have a greater idea or greater information about the scene of investigation. But if you look into the earlier crime scene, the very best example we can see is about Arushi Talwar case. You can see how the evidences were completely destroyed, or they didn't know how to handle the evidences. There were a lot of fingerprints, blood stained fingerprints were there. They didn't know how to handle those uh, you know evidences, those fingerprints and all. Ultimately what has happened is those evidences, even though they had a lot of value, even though they were giving a lot of information about the person who were in that particular premises during the crime has taken place, the fingerprint, they had of no value because they couldn't handle it properly, they couldn't collect it properly or pack it, whatever is the activity that has taken place. So that is an issue that happens. Common myth about crime scene investigation is people think, it is very easier to enter a crime scene and collect all the evidence, but ultimately that is not a fact. The thing is, there's a lot of procedure we need to carry out, when we enter a crime scene. We feel okay if we just skip this particular, procedure, nothing is gonna happen. Ultimately we are always collecting the evidence, but no, we need to follow the entire procedure that has been mentioned or that has been given with respect to crime scene investigation. If we are going to skip a particular procedure or step, ultimately we are losing the one or the other evidence from the crime scene, because there's a lot of trace evidences. We cannot lose these evidences. All the evidences has its importance. So just eliminate this myth from your from your thought that entering a crime scene and doing the investigation is the easiest task, which actually is not easy. Which actually is not easy.
So, what is the important lesson you have learned from your forensic career?
Important lesson. I rather I would give it as a piece of advice, rather than giving it as a importance. You know, we should always make sure that our basics are really clear, because that is where the foundation lies. If our foundation is not strong, we cannot build an entire building. We're not at all aware about the basics of forensic science, not forensic science, basics of science. See, forensic science is nothing but it includes the entire basics, the entire thing of science only. Okay, chemistry is there, physics, biology. These are the different sciences that are there. If you don't know what is the solution, what is the solvent, how are you going to proceed with the toxicological evidence when you handle it, or how are you going to, handle with the, toxicological sample that you receive for the purpose of examination. You don't know what is the basic of chemistry. You don't know how to go for the examination of all these solution or all these samples. So one thing that I need to tell is, you feel like entering into forensic science is completely different, but ultimately that is not the fact. We always need to clear our basics, from whatever we have learned. You've cleared your first year, that doesn't mean you can just remove everything that you've learned from your first year, because whatever you've learned in first year, that is the basic. You need, with the help of these basics only, we can go into an advanced state. Once you reach the advanced state, you're going to go into a different state, different stage. So that is where we apply all these basics and all these things that we have learned. So take it as a point, matter of advice, piece of advice from my end, that make sure your foundation is very strong. Foundation in the sense your basics are very strong, because wherever you go, you have to apply these basics. So that is one, advice that I want to give to all these students or all who are there in the field of forensic science.
Okay, ma'am. So, according to you, what is or what will be the biggest challenge in forensic career?
Biggest challenge in forensic career is, once you complete your graduation, we need to figure out which is the, to where we need to go, which field we are supposed to go. So that is one challenge, which usually students face. They come, they ask, like, which field are we supposed to go? They feel like, going into a specific field will yield a good job, which is actually a wrong, fact. That is not at all the fact. Going into a good job is not a fact. The thing is, how you have grabbed the things will lead to a good fruit. So, whatever the field you need to select is based on the, years of, education, so that is one wherein the students fail, and it is quite challenging for the students to, come up with a specific thing. And the other thing is, at the end, once they clear their graduation, post graduation, the biggest challenge that the students or the people of forensic science they face is regarding job. It is quite difficult with respect to current scenario to get a job in forensic science, because there's a lot of students who are graduating from forensic science. Earlier, only few, let's say only 10 colleges were there, but now not even double, tripled, and it's like 4, 5 times the colleges have been increased. So there's a lot of people who are graduating from forensic science field. So it's quite challenging to get a job, but ultimately it depends upon our skills, the way we grab things, and the way we deliver it.
Okay, ma'am. So, can you point out a single person who is number one in crime scene investigation?
See, what I feel is, since these years I've been reading his book, I feel he has a great knowledge about crime scene investigation. I usually refer his book. He's from a different. He's not from India. I think he's from U.S. or some, foreign country. His name is Barry J. Fisher. So he has a very good, knowledge about crime scene investigation. So I actually follow up all his, new methods, or the information that he gives with respect to crime scene investigation. crime scene investigation. There's a book which he has published. Being an author of that book, it's an amazing book to go with. You just need to read that book through your entire process. There is one person who I really feel is he's a great gem for crime scene investigation part.
Okay, ma'am. What are the three books you would like to recommend for our audience about crime scene investigation?
So usually with respect to crime scene management or investigation, there are three books. One is an Indian author. That is a very basic book. The learners can understand. It's a easy go book. That is Forensic Science in Criminal Investigation and Trials. The author is B.R. Sharma. It's a really good book, which has all the information about the entire forensic science, specifically crime scene investigation. The second book is Crime Scene Investigation Procedural Guide. And there are two authors. One is Michael S. Maloney, and the other author is Donald G. Hosman. So that is the second book which I would refer the audience to go through with respect to crime scene investigation. And the last book is Complete Crime Scene Investigation Handbook. All these three books are the basic versions, so basic. So I would recommend these three books for the audience, so that it will be a greater help for them to gain knowledge with respect to crime scene investigation.
Okay, ma'am. So the final question is, where can listeners find you online?
So I'm always active on LinkedIn. You can actually reach me out with the same name, Achsah John, in LinkedIn. Anywhere you sort of reach me on LinkedIn platform with the same name.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for participating in our session. Thank you from Scoolya, ma'am.
Thank you.